It's an honor to have you here. And you're coming in from Sydney, Australia. Is that correct?
I sure am. Very warm summer Sydney.
Oh God, yeah, it's totally opposite of what Norway is. It's ice cold, minus degrees. Yeah, it's. I would love to have that warmth you guys have in the winter, but then again, we enjoy the summer while you have winter. So
It's true.
yeah, it's the way it is. Um, we are going to talk a little bit about your launch journey, how you kind of evolved and changed your launches throughout the time you've been having your business. But before we do that, introduce yourself a little bit and tell us who you are, who you help, and how you help people.
Well, I help women in the packaged food and drink industry put more money in their pocket. So basically, I help them get on shelves and into consumer baskets and make money doing it so that they can spend more time with their family, their children, or reinvest in their business so they can take more time off or get on more shelves, whatever it is right for them. I have a background working for large consumer goods enterprises, and my values ultimately didn't align with big food, even though
Hmm.
it's always what I wanted to do. So I quit corporate life and went and lived with a shaman in Peru and then in an ashram in India and found myself, so to speak. And when I came back to Australia, and I have over my adult life, my entire life actually traveled a lot, living in Asia, in North America, in South America, and various other places. And I came back to Sydney and realised that there was this swell of movement to online and people starting their own business. And I could see the struggle that a lot of women had around, had brilliant creative ideas around food and drink, but didn't necessarily have the commercial
Hmm.
confidence. And I had that in spades. So, Females in Food is my online platform where I help them build a business that's profitable so that they can have more freedom. And I do that through an online program called Foodpreneurs Formula.
Nice. Is the food and beverage industry, is that hard place to make it? I guess you can say.
Yes, it is very hard. I mean, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth, but the truth is that, particularly in food, it's hard to make it. Why? Well, primarily for two reasons. It's super competitive, and two, margins are tight. They're better
Mm.
in beverage and alcohol. I don't tend to really work with alcohol entrepreneurs, but generally speaking, yeah, it is really tough. But it's not impossible. You just, there's some key attributes that you've got to have. And one of them is to not consider that taste is everything. Yes, for me, having a great tasting product is the operating opening line. You're not going to build a great business just because it's the yummiest tasting jam or, you know, the chewiest cookie. That's not what's going to cut it for you.
Yeah, and then I guess that depends on the person who's tasting it as well. I mean, we all have different tastes and preferences, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah, but let's talk a little bit. Your launch journey. Obviously, you have a couple of programs, and you are thinking about doing a mastermind, and you're also thinking about doing a podcast. So let's start at the beginning of when you kind of launched. I don't know what is the first thing that you launched, and how did you go about launching that first thing?
I launched a membership program in 2016. So for 19 Australian dollars a month, you got a community of members. You got new content from experts, including myself, every month, and that may be, a nutrition person or a packaging designer. And we also did live events. And so
Mm.
it meant, and I had a waitlist system, and it meant opening and closing on a regular basis and doing a lot of activations to open the cart effectively. It
Hmm.
soon went up to 23 Australian dollars and then 29 Australian dollars, I think. And on that basis, we did really, really well. Um, and I focused very heavily on the aspirational aspect of owning your own food or drink business, and tapped into the mindset of the dream, living the
Hmm.
dream and being the place for women in food and drink uh, to come together and to celebrate and to support each other. I was very clear on the pillars of inspiration, connection, and education. And on that basis, it was fantastic. And I always used WooCommerce and webinars, um, and active campaign, and those kind of were the three that connected everything in my business, as well as Facebook at the time.
Hmm. So you launched by using a webinar to get them in and then sell them on the membership backend.
Yeah, and everything was live. Nothing was evergreen back then.
Mhm. Did
And
you how often did you launch it, by the way?
yeah, I probably launched it at least once a quarter, possibly every other month. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Plus, you could join during the live events as well, and so they happened a couple of times a year, predominantly in Sydney, but also Melbourne, Sydney at the
Mm.
time. Yeah,
Yeah. And how were you feeling when you did these launches that you did over and over again? Did you feel like, you started at ground zero and then you felt like you kind of gradually got better at this and felt like you started to master the launching aspect?
I did. Yeah, I feel. Look, I'm very comfortable with coaching and teaching, and also taking people on that cadence. I was very conscious of, and I think for many people who are launching and have launched, they probably are familiar with the idea of the cadence, drumming up excitement and having a hook so people turn up, and then continuing I guess, the excitement, but also the FOMO, the fear of missing out, by having a cart closing
Hmm.
situation. So for me, it felt really energizing. But remember, that was year one.
Yeah.
And I have oodles of energy at the best of times anyway. But year one, anything was possible, and I guess it was the first of its kind too in the world. So there was a lot of
Hmm.
attention and a lot of media, and we sourced media as well. So I felt like I was floating on some levels, but also incredibly busy. Yeah,
Hmm. Right. Um, yeah, so you continue to launch this and you did this manually. Did you ever actually make it into some kind of evergreen automated thing or did you do something else?
I have now. Now the
You have
business
not.
has changed quite a lot. Yeah, just over 5 years. And happy to talk you through the pivot if you like.
I would love
Um,
that. Yeah.
okay, yeah. Thanks. If that's helpful, I, um, I guess maybe to burst the bubble of that, uh, excitement and the constant new launching and the live webinars, I pivoted 2 years ago to a coaching program with a lifetime access. So the price uh, went up significantly. I started to charge in US dollars. I've always had people interested and clients from the US and other parts of the world, but mostly US and Australia. And so, because US currency is universal, I
Hmm.
pivoted to that. And I also changed it to lifetime access. So that combated any objections around oh, I just don't have the time or the money now. It's like, well, if you've got the problem now, you can join up on, say, 4 payment installments or one payment, and you've got the content, the curriculum, the community, and most importantly, my coaching that happens every other week live for a lifetime. And the price, as I said, went up. It's currently $14.97 US. And what I did to support that, which continues to today, is an evergreen webinar, or AKA masterclass, where I talk about the 3 key aspects of getting more sales and more money, pardon me, and more freedom in your food and drink business. And then I also pivot in that same masterclass into talking about the program. So an hour of value, and then the last part I talk about Foodpreneurs Formula, my online
Hmm.
program. And that was really hard to create. I've got to say, it took a lot of time. There's also a workbook that goes with it. I mean, the workbook stuff is great because it's extra value, but that's not the hard part. I think really getting the cadence right within the actual masterclass itself,
Hmm.
of not giving away absolutely everything, but giving value, lots and lots of value, and then the pivot to the sell, or the ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of the things I would say I've learned about that is, for my community, they often don't sit at desks all day in front of a computer. They're in production of
Hmm.
food and drink products. So I've got some question marks right now whether or not I create a shorter webinar, because the actual teaching of that is 60 minutes. Uh, and the percentage of people that complete the full, uh, watch the full 100%, is low.
Hmm.
The percentage of people that show up in the first place after registration, I think it's probably industry standard. But nonetheless, most of my traffic, I drive to that masterclass. And there's been a lot of learnings along the way in terms of, this year I've started to double down on advertising and driving traffic through social media to the masterclass. And I'm on a steep learning trajectory around the copy that is on the ad and the
Hmm.
copy that's on the registration page, and the imagery and solving a problem. And really, I spend my life, like I'm sure many of your listeners can, absolutely consumed about what my avatar is thinking and doing. Yeah.
Hmm. So you ditch the membership and then switch to the program? Is that, or is the membership still living its life on its own?
It's actually a really good question. I've got a hybrid. I no longer offer, and haven't for 2 years, the membership, but I honoured the members that existed. So
Hmm.
if people have cancelled their membership, they couldn't come back on that legacy product, because it is a legacy product. But what I
Right.
found is that the vast majority, once they realized how much I changed the program, because it's not only, what I didn't say earlier was that I no longer do, like, so I've added in live coaching, and I've added in a lot. The curriculum follows a success path. Um, uh, and I understood and learnt that concept from that Canadian guy. Um, can't remember his name in a moment. I'll remember. He's the king of membership and success. Stu
Stu McLaren.
McLaren. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Sorry. So I have both, but I only offer Foodpreneurs Formula lifetime access to the market now, and probably won't go back to membership. I can see how it is a fantastic offer, uh, but financially, and also in terms of the guilt that often I believe a lot of other membership site owners experience, and I certainly did, that you feel like you always have to be on and delivering when you've got a membership
Hmm.
fee of every month, even if it's just $19 as mine originally was, you know.
Yeah, you still feel like you have to deliver something, and yeah, you. I mean, if you kind of ditch one week, you still feel like, oh, I didn't deliver this week. Even though they might not feel it that way. Did you ever survey your members on the backgrounds of that to just kind of see if they feel like you didn't deliver what you promised?
Yeah, and the results that I always get is that there's always huge value.
Mm,
That there's um, I've never had feedback that, oh, there's not enough.
yeah,
I
exactly.
I think that's a classic entrepreneurial thing, where you over deliver.
Hmm. Yeah, and in terms of membership too, I see that, and that's what Stu talks about too, is that you don't actually need to deliver that much content all the time because people feel like they're dropping off or getting left behind because they can't keep up with all the content, and that is actually worse than maybe not giving out so much content all the time. So even just one piece of content a week is more than enough a lot of times.
Yes. Yes, that's definitely been my experience. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and at the moment, I'm actually, interestingly, that we're having this conversation about the way that I was doing live masterclasses for launch, and then I went to Evergreen, and then just to confuse your audience, I'm in the process now of preparing for a live masterclass again, because
Mm,
in the last 2 years since being with the lifetime access for the online program, I did what started as a 5-day challenge. I dropped it back to 3 days for that whole reason that you just said around people feel like if they drop back and they don't catch up with the content, then it's has a negative effect rather than a positive. So that's why I went
mhm.
from 5 to 3. But now I'm actually decided to go back to, for quarter 1 anyway, to a live masterclass, and
Yeah.
I'm in the process of doing that. I find that when people get taught by me and they get to experience what I'm really like, and it's much more impactful. I love it. I get heaps of energy from them, and it seems to have a much greater impact. I guess because people realize you're not just another talking head on the internet; that you are actually who you say you are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's interesting that you kind of testing out new things, even though you did one thing and now you're trying out another and kind of going back to where you started. But I guess, that is part of the launching evolution, that you basically try out new things and you test things just to see how it works. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. And then you can go back to something that did work.
Yes. Absolutely. It's interesting too, though, that I would say, and I was listening to Amy Porterfield about this recently, that Tony Robbins had said to her, I love the
Hmm.
lineage, that just stop doing new things all the time, just stick to one. But in essence, my program and my offer and the transformation that I get people has stayed the same, but the
Hmm.
way that I go to market and tell people about it has changed, and I have learned a lot. And so, yes, there's been a lot of pivots, and I love the way that you said sort of evolution. Um, um, but the classic, going back to that idea around cadence,
Hmm.
that stays the same in terms of getting people excited. The run up with uh, seeding ideas, and then saying it's coming, and then it's here, having again some sort of scarcity factor around the dates it's available and whether a replay is available. And for this masterclass that I'm doing in a couple of weeks, which would have been done by the time this podcast goes live, uh, then there'll be, I'm in the process of deciding. Well, I probably won't have a replay factor because I am going to sell on the masterclass. And so that's been something as well to consider. And I think it's important for people to think about, do you need a replay? I find
Hmm.
that with my evergreen webinar, actually, probably the 50% of the people that didn't show up do actually watch the replay. Um,
Right.
but on this occasion, I'm selling in a tight cart open period. Um, I, I must admit, I'm not 100% certain on my decision in this moment as this is being recorded, whether I'm going to provide a replay. I think just for my members.
Hmm.
So it's a really great topic that's a cornerstone problem for Cassie, who is the name of my avatar, my target market. And so there's a lot of, um, I think, opportunity to perhaps not give away the farm, if you know what I mean by that, because I tend to
Hmm.
over deliver with everything. And also, one of the things I'm doing is having a show up bonus. So I'm dealing with a key objective that Cassie has that will only be available on the live masterclass. Whereas with my evergreen masterclass, you get the workbook whether you turn up or not. And there's so much value in there. There's frameworks of mine and uh, solutions and questions to help you answer some of your biggest challenges, etc. So I think coming back to, well, the idea of reciprocity, but how much do you
Hmm.
give? I would say that over the years, I've given too much, and that's fantastic. But there needs to be a degree of tension around that. You need to pay for it. Um, and so it's about kind of honoring my own expertise. But the other part of that is what you talk about, that you can overwhelm people. One can overwhelm people with too much information.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about finding that balance, I guess. Perfect balance. Yeah. I'm curious though. So you done challenge, you done masterclass, webinar. Have you chosen those things based on what you want to do or what excites you the most? Is that has that been a central part of you choosing to do this?
Now, 5 years in, it's
5 years in
yeah,
now. Yeah.
yeah. It's about what excites me. Yeah,
Hmm.
and what I think will work. But I feel like the live is more my zone of genius rather than a 5 day challenge. Can I make them all work? Yeah, sure. But
Mm.
I'm much more effective, I think, in shorter periods of time, and it's better for me. One of the things that I've learned since I've been in this females in food business is I have to honor myself some more rather than be so focused externally. Even
Hmm.
now, and I don't know whether you can relate to this, but being an Aussie, um, and currently I work out of Sydney, and that's the beauty of the internet. And I don't need to be in the US where a lot of my customers are, and I make it work for them, but in a way that it works for me as well. Um, and um, Equally, the way I deliver things, I think if I can be the best version of me, then it's always going to be so much better for my customers.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's about, when you choose to do something that excites you, that you feel comfortable with, where you can be in your zone of genius, like you said, that's when you can bring the right energy. You are basically attracting the right people who want to work with you because of that energy that you bring into the table.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I always get comments that, you know, I'm so positive and highly energized. And I mean, I love what I do. You got to love
Mm,
what you do when you're launching and you've got an online program, and you spend a lot of time. Well, at least I do. I spend a lot of time physically by myself,
mhm,
so I'm interacting online with people a lot. But you got to love it because it's hard work. Yeah.
absolutely. What has been some of your biggest lessons from all of the launches that you've done? And yeah, what has been the biggest? I guess that's what I'm asking.
To be consistent with my key message and to really
Mm,
understand my target market's problems, which inform the key message. That has been the hardest journey for me, and to really get granular with it. That's what's been hard, to get underneath the problems that you're solving. Uh, it's not good enough to be on the surface. Uh,
mhm,
that's why I moved from membership to lifetime. It's why I reformatted the program. It's I spend in an inordinate amount of time understanding how to move Cassie from her frustrations and fears to her wants and her aspirations, and tapping into that and really understanding the triggers for her to want to take action. What is the point where enough is enough? And so for me, my example around earlier on, I was talking about I targeted that dream stage. I was in that dream stage 5 years ago. And then I realized that because of my extensive business experience with big brands and multinationals, and just having a really good feel for business, I realized actually that targeting that person that was just at the dream stage, the vast majority often didn't go on to really commit to building a business. And that's where I'm most comfortable, to be able to build a business that's purpose for profit. And so that's another reason why I shifted away from the membership. And part of that has meant getting closer to my, well, understanding that what I know intrinsically, I guess intelligently as well as just life experience, then how does that match up with her challenges and how can I offer her solutions? Um, and because I found there was a disconnect, really, if people just stayed at that dream stage. I totally respect it, but it wasn't necessarily where I wanted to play. So coming back to your question around my biggest lesson, it is around, sorry, um, key messaging and solving problems. And so I've just, over the years, I feel like if you could imagine that a glass of Guinness, the beer, a big,
mhm.
and the way once it's poured, and it's poured with such artistry, Guinness, and how it settles. Um,
Yep.
and and anybody who's listening who's never seen Guinness, it's like sort of like Guinness won't be happy to hear me say this, but it's like silt settling from the top to the bottom. It's certainly not silt, but that's what it's like, where it becomes clearer and clearer over time. And that's how it's been for me with the messaging and being able to offer my target market and women in the food and drink industry solutions that really are transformational. And over time, it's just got closer and closer to who I really am. And I think that the second biggest lesson, if I may just add that in, has been to back myself, to know that what I offer, as transformational as it is, and maybe not stuck at all at the dreaming stage, because I'm such a doer and supporter of women, that if that's what she wants, then I will get her there. But I've needed to learn how to say it in a way that she can hear it. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I was gonna say that, the reason that why you hadn't found your key messages or haven't been consistent is obviously because you hadn't found that key message. So it's easy to kind of shift from one thing to another and kind of make small changes, but that's all part of the process. It's all part of messaging, because it changes all over, during those years that you kept working on it. So it makes sense, to be honest.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels like it's taken a long time. And I don't want to be a downer for people listening, but I don't think you can necessarily speed up that process. And that's not
No,
saying, I mean, I did huge research before I launched, but it is that evolution. And for any business owner, online or offline, I'd say over time you just learn more and more. And the market changes so fast now with the internet.
true,
I mean,
true.
it's the speed of light at which things change and what people expect. And also, as I said earlier, I was the first to market 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And whilst I don't have any direct competitors for women in food and drink, there's other online entrepreneurs in the food and drink space offering education.
Right. Yeah. No, but I agree with the messaging part. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that people think that they should know their messaging straight away, but that's never going to happen, unfortunately. It's going to be, iterations and changes and pivots. And yeah, like I said, you're going to learn new things. And then based on that, you do something else. But the good part is that eventually you will get to that point where you feel like this is it. I'm finally here. This is the messaging. This is the key message that I want to get out there.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And now it's, putting more money in women's pockets to
Yeah.
be able to have more freedom. I'm really, really clear on that. And that's that feels so liberating, Ken. I've got to say, it's really only just come to me in the last couple of months, which sounds and to some people, perhaps it may sound really simple, but I think that has been the lesson, to keep it really simple. But there's so much knowledge behind that. It's insane, actually, the amount of surveying and research and observation, and observation, whether it's click-through rates on EDMs, or whether it's uh, engagement on social posts, or just, lately I've been doing a lot of qualitative interviews with people who are not members of mine but are in
Hmm.
my community, and those who are members, and ascertaining what's your perception of females in food. For those who haven't joined, why haven't you joined? um, I don't ask it straight up as bluntly as that, but there's a conversation, and then I
Yeah.
asked them their permission, of which they all gave me, to record the conversation, because I wanted to listen for things that they said. Um, and even this week, coaching my members, we were talking about financial freedom and doing your margin management. So how much money you put in your pocket to reinvest in your business for every product that they sell. And some people were saying they want, the beauty of having more money in their pocket is because they want to spend more time with their loved ones. And another person said she wants to send her two daughters, to a good school. I mean, I probably wouldn't have necessarily said or known that 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And
And, the impact that you have on people's lives, you are responsible for them to actually be able to do that.
and I take that responsibility very seriously, actually. I feel quite emotional about it, to be frank. Yeah, it's very important to me that women feel empowered and to be able to follow their passion and prosper. I think you probably teach what one teaches, what one's got to learn. And I've always wanted to just follow my heart. And that's what I want for females in food too.
Hmm.
It's very important for me that they feel supported, um, because we are talking about real life stuff. Can they afford to keep a roof over their head? Can they send their kids to the school that they want to go to? I have, if I may just give one example. There's a woman out of Long Beach, California, who's a member of mine whose child has is on the autism spectrum, and um, she says he's about 12, and she says that he probably won't necessarily be able to get a job. She thinks, like, I guess there's different degrees of being on the spectrum,
Hmm.
and her particular child, and her opinion is that he'll struggle. So she started her snacking business now to hand over to him in 8 to 10 years if he wants it, so that
Right.
he has a business. I mean, how would
Hmm.
I mean, I couldn't make that stuff up.
No, you couldn't.
No, I mean, it's just so powerful.
Yeah. That is really extraordinary. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love that. So, what does the future look like for you now, going forward? You're talking about launching a podcast, amongst other things.
Yes. Look, I'm so excited for this year ahead, 2022. I am launching a podcast. It would have just launched probably as this interview goes to air. And so I'm extremely excited and grateful to have had the opportunity to talk with you. Thank you. Uh, I I'm going to hone in on the podcast, which will be called Foodpreneur with Chelsea Ford, on helping more mature food and drink business owners know how to grow and scale. And it will be super helpful. And I think I'll probably continue doing live launches with masterclasses. So this first one will be in January, and time will tell, but it feels really right to go back there.
Hmm.
Uh, and I'm doing some live activations again. I'm going to attend um, a trade show, and I've invited members of mine to be on the Females in Food stand. So I was asked to have an exhibition booth and to brand it Females in Food. And so that's something really new, to do a live activation like that face to face and to see how that goes. So there's one for me in Melbourne in end of February, and then there's another one in Sydney that they've invited me to do. I'll see how Melbourne goes at the end of Feb. And it'll be interesting to see how that drives traffic
Hmm.
to Females in Food. And from a launching perspective, what will the show only offer be for me? How will I make that connection from face to face through to my world? And I guess that's where the launch of my podcast will be really helpful. Plus, I have other lead magnets and ways to add value to women in food and drinks life, like my evergreen masterclass, which, by the way, just to be clear, will continue in the background despite doing live launches.
Hmm.
So there'll be multiple touch points in how you can get into females in food. Uh, and the plan is to go international with those trade shows, where there's a lot of foot traffic, and a way to get up close and personal with people, because there's a lot of networking. And I'll be speaking also at an event. So there'll be an event in an event at that trade show. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I'll let you know how it all goes probably midway through next year. It'll be fascinating to look back on some of the changes, with the relaunch, revisiting of a live masterclass, the launch of a podcast, and this face to face with the trade show. I had no regrets not doing parties and events when I closed that down a few years ago. It was fortuitous because
Hmm.
COVID happened, and if my revenue, because that was a revenue stream, they were paid events.
Right. Yeah.
If my business was geared to that, I would have really been stuck. Um, so that the intention is not to go back to parties and events as such, but trade show is not a party. It's uh,
Yeah.
it's it's another activation.
Yeah. Exactly. Um, is there any final advice that you would give to people who are doing launching, or yeah, an experience that you feel like you should have shared that you haven't shared?
Plan. Plan, 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 plan. Yeah. The more that you're clear at the very beginning and you get it out of your head, the better, and onto a piece of paper. So for me, there's two primary documents that I have. One is a Gantt chart. So in an Excel spreadsheet, down the left hand side, everything that needs to happen from building the registration page through to the EDMs, through to the social media, through to the cart open. Uh, and then on the right hand columns, the dates and when they need to happen. And then the other document that I live and breathe by is a content or promotional plan where there's more. I expand on the copy. What am I actually going to be saying? What is the key message
Hmm.
for for the launch? So they kind of marry up, and I spend an inordinate amount of time on those. But I think that that's the key to a successful launch.
Love it. Love planning. And how can people reach out to you and work with you?
I would love them to come and say hello on Instagram, which is females.in.food. Please send me a DM, say that they've listened to us on your podcast. I think that would be delightful. I honestly, truly do get a buzz from connecting with people in real life, because as I said earlier, I spend too much time by myself. So even if you're an introvert, don't worry, I won't bother you. I'll just say hello back. And check us out on the web, femalesinfood.com, and there's a stack of resources on there that they can grab if they're interested or find out about me.
Awesome. We'll link up everything in the show notes so people have something to click on. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and your expertise or experience. I mean, experience. Yeah.
Ken, thank you so much for the opportunity and your beautiful podcast speaking voice. It's lovely to be around.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody who's been listening in this week. We'll take care and we'll see you again next week.